Breaking news. Putin's opponents in Ukraine have grown weary of protest and taken up arms. A group of camouflaged soldiers were practicing the fundamentals of war in Russian in a sandy ravine outside of Kyiv. 50 or so Russians have joined a newly formed battalion in the Ukrainian army to fight against their countrymen. One fighter, who goes by the call sign Grecha, Buckwheat, has said, "I decided to get into Ukraine as soon as possible to fight against Russia, against the Putin regime, against imperialism." Many different nationalities are represented in the International Legion of the Ukrainian Army, which also includes the Siberian Battalion. Combatants hid their identities and refused to give their names by covering their faces. There were members of Siberia's minority ethnic groups among them in addition to ethnic Russians who had held oppositional views for decades. There are other Russian forces supporting Ukraine's cause. Another group, the Freedom of Russia Legion, and the Russian Volunteer Corps, both with ties to the far right and football hooligans, gained attention this spring after making brief incursions across the Russian border. Totally legit. The spokesman for the International Legion said he was unable to discuss the specific methods by which Russians enter Ukraine, but that some travel in small groups while others travel alone. He emphasized that we do not transport them in the trunks of vehicles. The issue is not trespassing. This is completely within the law. In order to get them into Ukraine, we need to investigate potential legal loopholes in both international and Ukrainian law. According to him, they are all military contractors and none of them are prisoners of war. Grecha claimed to have been born in the Crimea region of Ukraine but had spent most of his life as a paramedic in Moscow. "My ultimate goal in life is to see Crimea, where I was born, become part of a free Ukraine." He claimed he does not have well-defined political views, but that they are more liberal than the current climate in Russia. Grecha further explained that he participated in anti-war demonstrations but ultimately concluded that they were futile. "Even though the current Russian government doesn't directly affect the fighter right now, I'm not in jail, I'm not a foreign agent," he said, "but I feel the state gives less and less freedom to its citizens. Eventually, it will all amount to a giant concentration camp." Last year, he attempted to leave Russia for Ukraine, but there was initially no plan in place and little to no information available. He camped out for a while in countries that don't require visas from Russians. He said he tracked down a group called the Civic Council, which advertises on its website that it is actively seeking new members for the Siberian Battalion. The location on its Facebook page is given as Warsaw. Grecha stated that he and his wife's transit was approved by the organization. "After waiting for some time in a third country, I received a letter telling me that we could finally leave. The letter also detailed the route we could take to enter Ukraine." He confessed that he had not informed his family of his decision to enlist. "Their opinions on this war are drastically different. We've had numerous discussions and debates about this issue. We have to win." Another combatant, Swede, claimed to have fled political persecution in Russia over a decade ago and to have been a resident of Sweden since 2011. He called himself an anarchist and hid part of his face while explaining that he had been forced to emigrate because of his involvement in anti-government and anti-Putin activities. Alexei Makarov, a former member of the National Bolshevik Party who was granted asylum in Sweden, and anti-Kremlin activist Ildar Dadin are just two of the prominent Russians who are known to have joined the Siberian Battalion. Shved said he started fighting last summer with another unit and that Ukraine is on the side of people's freedom in this conflict. "I think the key to bringing about political change in Russia and Belarus is to first defeat Putin's Russia," he said. "And the success of Ukraine is essential for this.